For more than 160 years, one symbol has walked calmly into the chaos the rest of the world runs away from. A white field, a red cross, no weapons, no threats, just neutrality. And yet this symbol commands more access, more trust, and more global influence than most nations. This is how the Red Cross became the world's quiet superpower. It began in 1859 on a battlefield in northern Italy. A young Swiss businessman named Henry Dunant rode into the town of Solferino and stepped into hell. 40,000 men lay wounded or dying with no doctors, no bandages, no plan. Dunant wasn't a soldier or a leader. He wasn't supposed to be there at all, but he couldn't look away. He gathered villagers, tore sheets into bandages, and treated every soldier he could find. French, Austrian, Italian, it didn't matter. His idea was simple. In war, everyone deserves humanity. He wrote a book describing what he saw, and the world was shaken. Kings, generals, and ordinary citizens read it. And for the first time, nations asked a radical question. Can we create rules for war? In 1863, Dunant formed a tiny committee in Geneva. 5 men, no budget, and a dream that sounded impossible. They proposed that every country should have neutral volunteers trained to treat the wounded, friend, or enemy. Most governments dismissed them. Some feared it would make war look too humane. But 1 year later, something historic happened. 12 nations signed the first Geneva Convention, humanity's first attempt to place limits on war. Out of that treaty came a new organization, the International Committee of the Red Cross. From the beginning, its power didn't come from armies but from trust. Its volunteers didn't ask who you fought for, only where you hurt. And that neutrality made them indispensable. Through the late 1800s, Red Cross workers appeared wherever suffering erupted: floods, epidemics, earthquakes. They crossed borders kings couldn't cross and entered battlefields generals couldn't reach. Then came World War I, the moment the Red Cross became global. As millions were taken prisoner, the Red Cross created the world's first centralized tracking system. Index cards, handwritten letters, and a mountain of human desperation. At its peak, they handled 7 million messages between families torn apart by war. They weren't just delivering letters. They were delivering hope. After the war ended, a new enemy rose: disease. The 1918 influenza pandemic killed more people than the war itself. Red Cross nurses became the thin line between survival and collapse. Their trustworthiness prevented entire nations from falling into panic. But World War II would test their neutrality like never before. Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, Allied bombings, concentration camps, the world was tearing itself apart in ways Dunant could never have imagined. The Red Cross inspected prisoner camps, delivered food parcels, and protected civilians wherever they could. But their neutrality came with a painful price. They couldn't always reveal the horrors they witnessed. They faced impossible choices: speak out and lose access, or stay silent and save who they could. Critics questioned them. History still debates them. Yet millions survived because Red Cross workers were allowed into places no outsider could enter. After the war, new threats emerged: decolonization, famines, dictatorships, civil wars. The world was no longer fighting nation against nation, it was fighting everyone against everyone. Through this chaos, the Red Cross evolved again. They became mediators between rebels and governments, negotiators for hostages, witnesses for prisoners no one else remembered. During the Biafran famine, they delivered food under gunfire. In Vietnam, they reunited families split for decades. In Rwanda, they protected genocide survivors in the aftermath of silence. Where politics failed, neutrality worked. But neutrality needed something stronger: global legitimacy. And in 1949, 196 nations signed updated Geneva Conventions. They recognized the Red Cross not as a charity, but as the guardian of humanitarian law. Its symbol became protected under international treaties. Misusing it became a war crime. A simple Red Cross earned more legal protection than most flags. That's soft power in its purest form. Today, the Red Cross is everywhere. Earthquakes, civil wars, refugee crises, flood zones. When ambulances can't reach, they reach. When governments collapse, they remain. When soldiers refuse to trust each other, they still trust the Red Cross. Their influence doesn't come from force, it comes from consistency. Year after year, decade after decade, they show up. Not as heroes, but as helpers. And that reliability creates something stronger than fear, credibility. But the Red Cross has its shadows too. Accusations of mismanagement, criticism of disaster responses, controversies over neutrality. In a burning world, silence can look like complicity. Yet the Red Cross survives because its mission never changed. They don't serve governments or armies. They serve humanity. And humanity keeps calling them back. Their superpowers today are stunning. They can cross borders close to diplomats, enter prisons close to journalists, deliver aid denied to activists. They can speak to rebels, generals, presidents, and still be welcomed by civilians. They're the only global institution whose authority comes from suffering, not strength. The only neutral force powerful enough to shape how the world treats the wounded. The only organization trusted by both sides of a war. Their archives hold the testimonies of prisoners, refugees, and survivors, stretching back more than a century. In a world drowning in noise, they operate in quiet. In an age obsessed with exposure, they work in anonymity. In a time defined by division, they stand above politics. And that makes them something rare, a power that does not demand loyalty, it earns it. 3 lessons remain from their story. First, neutrality is not weakness. It's a shield that lets you walk where others cannot. Second, structure beats chaos. The Red Cross turned compassion into a global system. Third, the softest power is the hardest to destroy. Empires fall, borders shift, governments rise and vanish. But as long as humans suffer, someone will need to answer their cries. That someone, more often than not, is the Red Cross. It doesn't conquer territory, it conquers fear. It doesn't rule nations, it serves them. It doesn't seek glory, it seeks access because access saves lives. And that quiet access is a form of power no army can compete with. The Red Cross isn't eternal because it's perfect. It's eternal because it's necessary. In the darkest places on earth, one symbol still carries light. A simple red cross, a reminder that even in war, humanity can still win. And sometimes, the greatest authority is the one that chooses not to rule at all.